Hearing clicking, but I will just talk over it. Hmm. Good evening, everyone. Sorry for the clicking. I'm not sure what it is, but we will proceed anyway. I'm Dr. Imani Ma'at. Thank you for joining us for another great episode of Progressively Yours Health and Wellness Podcast. I just thought about something. I always go first. Sometimes I think Jay Bernard should go first so that we keep it like balanced. But this is working for now, so I guess we'll continue. But let me turn it over to him so that he can thank you all for joining us this evening and enjoy the show.
Yes, thank you, Imani. It is indeed an honor and privilege that to join us and be a part of a very wonderful show with Dr. Shatavia Thomas, and she's going to be our guest tonight to talk about motherhood. Again, we'd like to start with a ritual that we've begun on the show, and that is with our spiritual moment of action. And I like to just sound for us tonight, and I like for you to just take a few breaths in through and out through your nose, your eyes, if you like, as we get centered in a very spirit to welcome the spirit of our ancestors. We pay homage to our ancestors, them. And so take 3 breaths in and out through your nose. Focus. And as you hear the ting shells, observe what you may feel in your body. It is for the ancestors that we come. And we welcome the cloud of words to be a part of our show, our podcast, as we're here to continue our transforming our lives so that we may go into the world change agents. It is for the ancestors. Ashe. Namaste. Amen. Imani?
Ashe, amen. Thank you so much for that, Bernard. And I would like to continue. Last week, I shared a little bit from one of my favorite little books. I have a big version and a little version, The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And these agreements are so simple, but yet so powerful. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the first agreement, which is be impeccable with your word. And I want to tell you a little bit about what it says about being impeccable with your word. The first agreement is the most important one and also the most difficult one to honor. Be impeccable with your word. It sounds very simple, but it is very, very powerful. Why your word? Your word is the power that you have to create. Your word is the gift that comes directly from God. Through the word, you manifest your intent regardless of what language you speak. What you dream, what you feel, and what you really are will all be manifested through the word. The word is a force. It is the power you have to communicate, to think, and thereby to create the events in your life. The word is the most powerful tool you have. But like a sword with two edges, your word can create the most beautiful dream, or your word can destroy everything around you. One edge of the sword is the misuse of the word, which creates a living hell. The other edge is the impeccability of the word, which will only create beauty, love, and heaven on earth. The human being is like a fertile ground where seeds are continually being planted. The seeds are opinions, ideas, and concepts. The word is pure magic. We plant a seed, a thought, and it grows. Every human is a magician, and we thoughtlessly cast spells on each other all the time with our opinions. Someone gives an opinion and says, "Look, that child is ugly." The child listens, believes she is ugly, and grows up with this idea. It doesn't matter how beautiful she is, as long as she has that agreement, she will believe that she is ugly. That is the spell she is under. These types of spells are difficult to break. Whenever we hear an opinion and believe it, we make an agreement and it becomes part of our belief system. The only thing that can break a spell is to make a new agreement based on truth. The truth is the most important part of being impeccable with your word. Only the truth has the power to break the spell and set us free. And I'm going to stop there and get right into the show. Thanks for letting me share.
You for those powerful from the four agreements. Um, before Dr. Shay, as she refers to herself, I just wanted to share with the audience. I had um, a very interesting experience, health experience today, something that I've done before, um, but it was several years ago, and I decided to do something, to do it again. It's gastrocardiogram, gastrocardiogram. And so folk may ask, well, what is a gastrocardiogram? Well, the process is they drop a pellet, a small into your stomach so that it can measure the stomach acid level. Stomach acid is what breaks down our digestion, and if we don't have the right pH levels operating in our stomach, and Mona, you can talk even great about that in terms of the pH that we intake, like the Kangen water. That's very good. But anyway, I had that experience today. I go Thursday to find out my results so that I can be familiar with what I need to take if my acid levels is too high or too low, what I need to add digestive enzymes with each meals or probiotics. So it's good to know what our stomach acid level is because it helps in terms of digesting our food so we get the most nutrients into our body. So if you are interested in that, I talk more about that, not in this show, but I just wanted to mention it as a health tip to knowing our stomach acid level is very important for our digestive process. So that's a tidbit of healthcare today from Jay Bernard. And
Thank you for that. You,
yes, you're welcome. So without further ado, I want to introduce our featured guest tonight in the person of Dr. Thomas, Dr. Shay Thomas, and we refer to her as Dr. Shay, who is an Atlanta native. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist, consultant, and owner of Dr. Shay Speaks, LLC. She specializes in work life balance, caregivers' grief, diversity, relationship well being, family businesses, and sports and entertainment families. With 20 years of experience, Dr. Shay has worked as an outpatient mental health and substance abuse counselor, juvenile court family therapist, middle school guidance instructor, university crisis response staff counselor, nonprofit executive director, professor, assistant academic dean, clinical supervisor, clinical director, and medical family therapist. Dr. Shay is a clinical fellow of the American Association for Marriage and Family Therapy, or AAMFT, and she is also an AAMFT approved supervisor and a national certified counselor. She currently serves as a distinguished part time marriage and family therapy professor at North Central University. She has published in peer reviewed journals such as the Journal of Systemic Studies, SAGE, and Family Health Systems. She regularly facilitates workshops and seminars at professional conferences and in the community. She has been featured on several popular press publications such as Best Self Magazine, Family Therapy magazines, rolling out the AJC, WXIA, 11 Alive, and she is also a self-published book of two poetries, Alex Shay Collection Volume 1, Love, Life, Loss, and New Life, uh, Volume 2 of Grief, Growth, Grace, and Gratitude. Dr. Shay lives here in Atlanta with her husband and with her 11-year-old son. So we are well prepared, and as she is, to share with the audience tonight. And feel free to any questions or comments during the broadcast. If we can respond to them, we will. But we're so excited that Dr. Thomas will now join to be with us. Welcome to our show, Dr. Shay Thomas.
Thank you so much. It is an honor to be here. I consider it a privilege to be among such wonderful professionals as yourself, very accomplished, very kind, and certainly I was humbled when I was asked to speak about motherhood because, I'm sure Benny can relate. I'm still kind of figuring it all out. So honored to be here.
Well, thank
Well,
you.
great.
Thanks so much, Dr. Shay. I've heard so much wonderful things about you, and I saw a lot of overlap in terms of some of the work that I've done and some of the work that you're doing, and that was exciting to me because I'm sure, we all kind of see things through our funnel, if you will, and so it's definitely going to be interesting to hear about some of your experiences concerning and we don't have to just focus on motherhood. It'd be nice to do that. I mean, because I'm sure you could probably talk the whole show about motherhood. But if there are other things you want to talk about as well that are relevant to your experience and your work as a professional, feel free. This is a casual discussion. We try to keep it um, so that our guests can be relaxed and comfortable, and the flow just goes. So tell us a little bit about your journey into where you are now.
Sure, sure. Thank you. So I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I have been blessed to work in a number of different settings. Starting out, I didn't quite know exactly what specialization I wanted to have under the mental health umbrella. And so I have really taken the opportunity throughout my career to expose myself to different environments and use my skills and knowledge and collaborate in different settings. As as was mentioned in my bio, I worked in schools, nonprofits, private practice, and in the community. And so I think for me, it is just kind of learning how those transferable skills and those themes that you see can be a running thread no matter where you are and no matter what or whom the population is that you're serving. I think when you're starting out, you kind of get caught up on what's my niche, or what is my brand, and what is my even style of therapy for those who are mental health professionals, and all of that is important. But I think when it comes down to it, especially now after um, 20 years in the mental health field, I just try to stick to the basics of being compassionate, expressing empathy, collaborating, active listening, kindness, and focusing on strengths and resources.
Very cool. Tell us, give us a story. People like to hear stories. Give us a story that has really impacted you or given you that aha moment during your work, where sometimes we think we have things all figured out and then something happens. It's like, wow, okay, that was major. So do you have any favorite stories that you like to tell?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think for me, it is learning how to practice what you preach. And so I would say the theme of my growth and recovery, both personally and professionally, has been centered along the theme of grief.
Mm.
And so after experiencing the loss of very close family members, multiple very close family members in a short period of time, I really had to learn to practice what I preached in terms of self care and giving myself some grace and accepting help, realizing that it's okay to have your moments, your days, your time. And so the stories are centered around, things such as friends and family giving me gentle reminders that it's okay, me transferring that over to my clients who were sometimes dealing with different things and sometimes dealing with similar grief, and kind of using some appropriate self-disclosure to say, hey, it wasn't until I experienced my own grief that I understood why people want to keep going. Um, and what I mean by that is I was always one to encourage people to take some time off after tragic things happen and unexpected things happen. But I learned through my own experience that it's kind of this gut reaction, protective mechanism, where when you stop, that's when when you have those moments of silence and of solitude, everything that has been put on the back burner going, really kind of comes up and slaps you in the face. And so it wasn't until I went through that personally that I understood the value and the different ways, I'll say, in terms of how people grieve, how people cope, demonstrate resilience. And for me, it's an ever growing process, because I don't think there's kind of a time limit to grief, if you will.
You want to follow up, Imani?
No, other than that, I can relate. I mean, it's I've been through some the loss of my dad this year in February, and so I understand about taking time off. I thought about it, and I said, and I'm, we all take time differently, but I have three sisters, and all of them have gone on vacation, since that time, and I'm like, I haven't gone anywhere. I need a vacation. I have one coming up, but I scheduled it kind of way out. And I did think about it during that time, but I didn't think like I need to do something now. I just said, well, okay, yeah, that looks really good. Let's do that in November. So it's coming up now, but yeah, and like you said, when you stop being busy, that's when you have to deal with the feelings.
Yeah.
and so I totally can relate to that.
Mm.
Yeah, Dr. Shay, that you would bring in that as a theme as it relates to motherhood, Black motherhood. And I wrote this note, and then I want to read to you that I want to get your response and reaction to theme of grief. And I've often thought about grief beginning at the moment that we are born.
Mm.
That um, when I leave my mother's womb, at that moment I began to grieve.
Mm.
And I just say what I mean by that is that for those however many months that an infant has a developing fetus, that I'm in my mother's womb, I'm there alone, I'm comforted, hopefully I'm soothed by the warmth, hearing the fluids that's providing a comforting element. Is me alone. And then all of a sudden, I'm thrust into an environment of chaos. And now I've got uh, come along a journey where I've lost this sacred space and be. So I've often thought that we begin to grieve from the moment that we are born. Read, but let me get you to respond to that, and then I come back and share the statement about motherhood.
That resonates with me, because there are so many layers and levels to grief, and it is such a systemic process and a relational process. And so when you think about the context of a womb changing and to your point, thrust into the world, it's adjustment, it's figuring things out, and that certainly can also be synonymous with motherhood. I actually also very quickly jotted down some things about motherhood. I said, well, if somebody asked me to define motherhood, um, I don't know what I would say. And then so I just kind of jotted down. I think it's the ultimate paradox. I think motherhood is joyous and petrifying. I think it's humbling and exciting. I think it's foundational, but it's also evolving. I think it's protective and prompting. It's laughter and tears. And it is the ultimate like catch, attach, release. I think in Michelle Obama's book, she said that being a mother is like a master class in letting go. So that definitely resonates with me. And like I said in the beginning, figuring it out, but there's the interplay of grief and joy and fear and excitement and lots of other things wrapped up in motherhood.
Thank you. And something that us fathers cannot comprehend or understand.
Mm.
We were to get it. I had a client once, a brother was in session, and he was sitting and he began to weep in a session. This was a couple session. Um, and I asked the question, what's behind your tears? Surprised me because it's the first time I'd ever heard. I had not even thought about it. And he said, uh, I just realized and recognized that I can never what it's like to carry a baby inside of me.
Mm.
And then there was a moment of it was like, wow. So as men, we cannot get it. We cannot identify with, as said that in his interview with Bill Moyers, that motherhood advice. And so I want to read this uh, note to you something while I was in the office. To take up this text. It's called Motherless Daughters. Um, um, and Hope Edelman wrote this, but I'm going to get your response. She said, "Ask any woman whose mother has died." And I saw that when you that's why I said it was interesting when you introduced the theme as grief. When I was reading this earlier, she says, "Ask any woman who's at an early age or any age, and she will tell you that her life is altered. That this is one fact forever changes is and who she will be. Gone, teacher, advisory, role model, that of being a woman. Often, whole parts of role transfers to the daughter, grieving, short, cut off, or dismissed in order to the family going, end quote. A daughter's relationship with siblings changes and secondary losses can be overwhelming. Adults, a great variety of relationship problems can arise as a result of primary abandonment. Transition to a woman's life, leaving home, getting married, having a child, yearnings for guidance or company, and there's often no.
Losing the audio.
Wait,
Did you hear that, Dr. Shay, or did you lose it also?
I I think we all lost it a
Yeah,
little bit.
you were breaking up a little bit, Bernard. Can you repeat the
Just
last
towards
part
the
of what
end.
you said? You're muted. You're muted. We can't hear you. You're muted. We can't hear you.
okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, there was the last part that
Here.
you said that we missed the whole thing.
You missed the whole thing?
The last part, like the last 3 or 4 sentences.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'd read those again.
Okay.
As adults, a great variety of relationship problems can arise as a result of this primary abandonment. Transition times in a woman's life, leaving home, getting married, having a child, brings up guidance or company, and there's often nowhere to turn.
Mhm.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Okay, we're gonna make this a happier session. No, no, I'm fine. I'm fine with it. I think.
Commonality, Dr. Imani, that you and I share is that we recently lost our fathers, and
Wow.
we may have some similar sentiments as it relates to losing a parent. So I have not lost my mother, but I have both grandmothers who I grew up with very closely within
Okay.
the past, 5 years. Well, I mean, it's a long story. I've lost probably 7 family members in 5 years.
Whoa.
Very significant. And so I lost all four grandparents in a short period of time. And I grew up, you know how some people say extended family? I don't know what that means because my grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins have been such an integral part of my life that losing both, and I'll just center on mothers because that's part of our focus, losing both grandmothers in a short period of has been very impactful in my grief process. And I don't think, to kind of extend that, I don't think I could have, gotten through it were it not for kind of the village of the family. And so I also want to honor that, an aunt is motherly, an older cousin is motherly, a godmother is motherly, a mentor is motherly. I would not have gotten through my doctoral program were it not for the one Black female in the department who was very motherly. And so I think that honoring the spirit of motherhood, even if you did not physically birth a child, is equally important.
I had that professor too through my doctoral program, and she's a year younger than me, but we created such a strong bond, and she was almost more determined than me for me to finish that program. So I'm so grateful to her motherly and nurturing attitude, towards the support. So one of the things I also think about is and men can't do the term multitask has everything to do with women, but I think also as mothers we master the ability to multitask. I can easily do three or four things at one time, and I do. I'm on the phone, I'm on the computer, I'm doing something else, and folks are like, guys will say, what are you doing? I was like, I'm doing all of it. So don't mess with me. I'm on a roll right now. We can tie the shoe of the child while we're doing something else with our teeth, and that always seemed to not amaze me. My mom raised five children and
Mhm.
four girls, and then she did four sets of hair every morning, and I'm like, how? I raised one son. We both have a son. Mine's 35 now, but you know, um, I can't imagine raising five children and staying sane. So there's definitely
Yeah.
something to be said for
Yeah,
for
my mother is one of eight, and I still hear stories to this day, and I think about my grandmother, and um,
yeah.
yeah, it's amazing to hear the stories.
Yeah. Well, they were organized. I mean, a lot to do with having organizational skills,
Mhm.
and I think that helps. And I don't think I'm the most organized person, but I know that I've being a mother helped me to organize and set priorities, set boundaries, and and all of that. So yeah, this is it's just interesting. Bernard, what are your thoughts?
I was wondering, why do you both think that in today's world, having a mother, whether it's my biological mother, a mother, is important in the critical times that we're living in? How, by not having a mother-like presence who can provide the and the hearing, uh, impacts the overall health of the children in our community today.
Hmm. I think that's a great question. Even though I personally have not lost my mother, I've certainly worked with clients who are grieving the loss of their mothers. And oftentimes I hear um, things similar to the comment that was just posted in terms of wanting and missing the loss of that sounding board, that confidant, that director, that person who gives guidance and nurtures. And so we kind of grapple with that and normalize it, right? Because we want to honor the reality of the pain of the loss. And then over time, and of course, it's different with each client, but helping people come to a place where they can uh, honor the wisdom of their mother's voice or honor the part of themselves that is similar to and different, kind of
Mhm.
wisdom and guidance and honor their spirit in a way, and even having a sense of awareness about the spiritual presence in the midst of the physical absence. And I think that that process is different for everybody, and of course everyone has their different beliefs, but I think we yearn for that because as humans we are social. We all yearn for nurturing and love in some kind of way, and some of us got that from our mothers, and so it's kind of the
Mhm.
and what that represents.
I
Hmm.
wanted to, yeah, thank you. Was just looking at a comment also from a dear friend. She said, losing my immediate family over a period of time has been a great feeling of abandonment to the degree of who I can talk to when I needed it in my younger years. And also, she said, over time, immaturity as a mother, a widow, and the youngest in my family has impacted how I've raised her own children. So yeah, I mean, I think, and it's interesting. I mean, I really like the blending of the issue of grief and motherhood, because it has definitely made me think about the cycles of life, and and just what it all means. The fact that in this society we're not um, we're not really primed to for the whole grieving process. It becomes something, a loss. People, oh, sorry for your loss. And some societies, they really do celebrate the life of the person and the fact that they've been with those people in places in Africa and in the islands. There was a singer that I really liked. I don't want to mess up his name. Um, um, Z, Z something, a Hawaiian singer. Izzy, I think it was Izzy, and he's one of his famous renditions of the song "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." They played that. They showed his homecoming coming celebration. His friends and family were in the water. Some were in boats. Some were standing there, and they were playing his music. They were dancing. They were laughing. They were celebrating his life. And he died young, as unfortunately a lot of performers do. And it was such a beautiful ceremony. It's on I guess YouTube. People can pull it up. But they're playing somewhere. They're playing him singing. With his ukulele, I guess, somewhere over the rainbow, and it's just so beautiful. And I'm like, how come we didn't learn to do that, to celebrate life, to and not to say those people didn't have their sad moments. They might have, his immediate, his wife, his children, people close to him. But as a community, they, celebrated. And, we do that also at funerals sometimes, or sometimes after the funeral. But it's interesting, looking at our families, looking at the roles of mothers and grandmothers. And I think this is telling, it wasn't Bernard. I was telling another friend of mine today. I said, my dad was the male in our family. For a lot of my cousins, a lot of my people who were like family, they weren't really related, but it was really a matriarchal um, family system that I grew up in. My mom's aunt came here from Jamaica, and she was kind of like the underground, overground railroad for people to come here to the States. They would come and stay with Aunt Sarah, and she would help them to get into school, help them to get jobs, help them to get apartments in New York City. And I thought, like, a number of people came and kind of, did it that way. And it was just kind of interesting to see the close the closeness and the relationships of the women, the sisters, the cousins, the aunties. Yeah, I mean, I had aunties I thought were blood relatives, and I found out later that they were just good friends of my parents. I was like, okay, that still works. Is she still Aunt Hopi? I mean, and that's just fine. But yeah, it's just interesting to look at the roles and how we mother other people's children. So many of us, so many of them, we're motherly to other
Right.
people's children.
Yeah, I thought about a few things you were saying. One, the celebration of life during the grief. I lived in New Orleans for 2 years, and
Oh,
they definitely celebrate life, the second lines and just the way the music and the dance and the celebration is incorporated was just fascinating to me. And I when I moved back home to Atlanta, I used to say, gosh, why don't we celebrate like that?
hmm hmm I
And
I
it's
think
just
it's
such a
beautiful.
Yeah, it's a wonderful celebration. And then to your point about the different impact for women, I think I mentioned before, so much of who I am as a mother, of course, parts of that come from my mother, parts of that come from both grandmothers, my aunts, and just even my great grandmother. I grew up with the blessing of knowing my great grandmothers, multiple great grandmothers. And my memory is kind of bad, but I do have vivid memories of images and conversations, and things will trigger my memories in a way that is very honoring of my relationship with them and very special in terms of how they imparted to me a little piece of what being a mother is all about.
What's your favorite part of motherhood?
My favorite part of motherhood is our son teaching me every day almost, how to make the necessary adjustments because of the like developmental stage that he's in. It's so funny
Yeah.
generationally. I think sometimes parents are very different from how they were raised, just because of the nature of the world. Whether you want to talk about, when I was growing up, it was, children are to be seen and not heard, and do as I say, and you don't question. I think nowadays many people are raising their children to be critical thinkers and outspoken and honoring of their feelings.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so figuring out a way to combine my very traditional, stereotypical Black mama self with my what does this child need in this moment? It's is like an ever changing process.
Right.
Um,
Right.
Uh, I was connected with the theme. Um, this mother was sharing with me an experience with her recently that he was at school and he slightly uh, and when he went home he told his mom, I saw you today. I saw you at my school. And she was saying, um, I'm making the name, Tom, I wasn't at your school today, but mom, I saw you. And so she thought, how did you see me? And he said, because picture of you in my mind, and you were there, and and when I was hurting, your picture, and I felt better because I saw you.
That's nice.
I thought, wow,
yeah.
and um, and so I thought, as mothers, you have the power to interject into the offspring so many years so that at any given moment in time, the child can draw. And that's I think one of the powers that mothers have. Fathers have it too, but it's different.
Mm,
Um, Consciously and emotionally, we're
mm,
going to draw from the mothers. I don't know. I was fortunate or not. I had four. I had about my birth mother, then adopted mother, then who left, and then a mother part of the family, and then a few years later, a stepmother.
mm,
And my favorite theologian, Howard Thurman, said, "I don't, I don't know who I am, so I don't know mothers to differentiate from in my identity, but they were all loving and unique, and having to carry their images in my life, need to commune with them on a spiritual level as an ancestor now is amazing. So I think um, the early life, especially those first 4 years, first 5 years between mother and offspring, are essential because as adults, we don't remember those first 4 years of life. We may start speaking, or somebody will say, "Well, I remember 3 and I had this experience." Well, that happens occasionally. That people vocabulary that they can begin to tell the story. But those, as you know, those first, the second trimester up until birth, the communication that's already taking place emotionally between mother and offspring has already developed the fetus, and the developing temperament and personality is being shaped and formed. And so for the mothers who are expecting, mothers who have young ones, those first, 4, 5, 6 years development are essential for emotional presence as best as the mother can be, and fathers with theme of motherhood tonight. How you, um, what's your response to in it?
Yeah, I think you asked for a story earlier, and as you were talking, Bernard, I thought about something that our son said to me when he was 5 years old, during the loss of grandfather. It was my maternal grandfather at the time, and I think, to your point, I think I was in his room multitasking. It was bedtime, and I was getting things ready for school the next morning, and it just hit me, just the loss. And I think I was in the closet in his bedroom trying to hide tears. And he ran in there and he said, "Mommy, what's wrong?" And I said, "Nothing. It's okay. It's okay." And as a therapist, you always want to you kick yourself sometimes because you're like, "Oh, I'm supposed to normalize that it's okay to cry."
Right.
So I said, honey," I said, I'm just thinking about granddaddy right now." And then he said, "You know what? You don't have to cry because remember you told me when you died." And and he said, "Isn't that a happy thing?" And I said, "Why is my 5-year-old son comforting me right now?"
Right, right,
My
which makes you
goodness.
cry more, right?
Yes. And it was something he heard, he saw. And as I think about all of the funerals that we've been to and through, over the years, I realized this kind of special connection having an only child, an only male child. I have
Mhm.
one. And so this interesting emotional connection that we have, and I feel like he's always kind of looking at me to check things out emotionally, but also, kind of as a radar, but also to kind of see how I am. And, I don't feel like he's responsible for me or anything, but I think as a mother, it calls upon me to kind of be more transparent about normalizing things, but also in those kind of ugly parenting moments when he's misbehaving or when I'm irritated and just really thinking about, again, as I mentioned earlier, the changing definition of motherhood and how I want to be as it relates to grief, discipline, um, letting go, as we talked about earlier, as he's in middle school now, and just all of that.
One of the things that I thought about while you were talking, because I also have a son, and we're very connected, and I can be just thinking about him, and the phone rings. I'm like,
Mm.
"Hey, what's going on?" "Nothing. I just thought of you and just wanted to call and see how you're doing." And I'm like, "But I was just thinking about you." And I mean, he'll do things like I was in Virginia for 3 years with my parents, and where I live here in Stone Mountain is on 3 acres in the woods, and I always had dogs with me. So I raised a couple of Rottweilers here. So I was thinking, I was in Virginia still, and I said, when I get back, I'm going to go to a shelter and I'm going to find a Rottweiler that needs a home, right? And the next day, my son calls and says, "Hey, Mom, I went to a shelter and I found a Rottweiler that needed a home." And I'm like, "What?" I was like, "You found my dog." I'm still trying to get that dog from him, but it's not going to happen because the dog is part of his tribe at home. But I mean, things like that are just it just happens. There's a real spiritual connection that, and not to say fathers don't have it, Bernard, but I just know, for myself that, I mean, from when he was in the womb, I don't know why I thought I was having a girl, and I kept saying because I did a whole natural thing. I had him in a birthing clinic, natural, so I kept saying, I'm gonna have a girl, I'm gonna have a girl. And I was dreaming one night, and he came to me and he said, I am not a girl. Stop telling people I'm a girl. I am a boy. And when I woke up, I was like, wow, I got this all wrong. So my mom, who was a nurse, for her career, she, was sitting right there, and he was born with like really long curly hair. She says, I think it's a girl. I think it's a girl. I said, no, Mom, it's a boy. He told me it's a boy. Oh, I think it's a girl. No, it's a boy. He told me. And so, they lift him up. It's like, oh, you're right. It's a boy. I said, he told me he was a boy, and I believed it. So enjoy those times with your son, the spiritual and the caring, because sons, and I'm sure it's not just only sons, but sons have a real bond with their mothers, and want to kind of look out for you, and the whole bit. So yeah. Bernard, you say, sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Shay.
No, I was just gonna say, and just in the spirit of being inclusive, when I think, I think a part of the blessing of my marriage is that my husband and I both kind of have an understanding of not understanding an appreciation for the role of father and the role of mother and what that means. And that don't mean we always agree, but it means that we have a big level of respect and understanding and appreciation for how we are both imparting something special and worthy and important into him, and figure out how to navigate that as he goes through different stages of his development.
In terms of, the show is about health and wellness, and my definition of health and wellness is really, really, really broad. I mean, it's like everything is about health and wellness. What are your words of wisdom to parents concerning diet, nutrition? How have you been able to, manage that roller coaster or maze in this life?
Yeah, I think modeling holistic health and wellness is so important for kids, for our role as mothers, our role as parents, and everything from what kind of snacks we're giving them for lunch. I remember when it occurred to me that that boy is eating too many Lunchables, and he doesn't like sandwiches. He doesn't want to bring a salad. Like what, and so even things as specific as that, the kind of dinners, how much, what kind of seasoning you're putting in the food, what kind of activity are you guys involved in as a family? So getting outside, in a day and age where most kids are glued to the video games and the phone, holistically including some physical activity for your physical health. And even promoting the generational changes that we have the blessing of now. I think don't be so self-sacrificing as a mother that it totally breaks you down and destroys your physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health. And so in what ways can you prioritize caring for yourself, because you realize that the healthier you are, the healthier mother, parent you can be.
I keep muting myself. I get background noise sometimes, but absolutely. I mean, mothers have to work out and keep themselves healthy. It's like the thing about the plane. You put on your own mask first, and if you're not whole, then it's really hard to support support your children in the way that they need to be supported. So it's so important that we take care of ourselves and take some time off, do what we need to do, exercise, eat right, a whole bit. Modeling, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
Rest.
Yes.
On top of that, right?
Hmm.
Yes, yes, yes.
Very important.
Yeah.
I don't.
And I think one of the things I see often, and has been a part of, I think she primarily and in particularly is as mothers, and as black mothers, in more cases than we might care to admit or want to admit, that you all have had to bear heavy, a lot of times, of being more single moms and having to wear this cape in all three of my women's group, uh, Dr. Shay. Uh, I've watched these sisters work through the cape off, of being. I've got to be the super mom or the super black woman, and it got to be strong to make sure are carried out, and finding a healthy balance, as I just heard the two of you in your conversation, to has been difficult and is a challenge, and but yet necessary for uh, for our mothers and our sisters and our black women to find in order to stay healthy and to be more women of strength. See, I think strong as a metaphor has not served our black women well. I think that kind of a part of the ethos, and I just like to often refer to these are women of strength. In the movie Woman King, that Viola plays an outstanding role in both the model, the show her and the other women as being strong, yes, as um, but also there was this inner strength of character in particularly when she and her daughter became in a relationship with each other near the end of the movie. But there was an inner strength that had, which is very different in than being strong when they had to physically fight. We got about a minute and a half to kind of respond to that before we wrap up.
Yeah, I think there's strength in showing vulnerability. And if we
Mm,
can, to your point, learn how to give ourselves permission to put the cape down. Of course, many women didn't pick up the cape by choice. They were, ended up in
right.
situations where they had to juggle and play multiple roles. And so it's just surrounding yourself and getting that message, internalizing that message. Um, there's strength in vulnerability. There's strength in seeking and accepting support.
Hmm.
Yes, thank you. All right. Well, we're at the end of the show, and
Wow.
really thank you, Dr. Shay, for being with us tonight. And we would like for you to be one of our returning guests if you're open to doing that. Is that a possibility?
Absolutely.
All
Absolutely.
Yay.
right.
It was
Thank you.
so nice.
Thank you.
I've enjoyed this
Yeah.
conversation and discussion. Just really touching. And I'm sure, we've had a lot of comments. Sorry that we couldn't respond to all of them. But a lot of people were moved about the discussion around grief and motherhood and, just kind of making it all work. So we're grateful to you. There's a lot more, right? Bernard said we have to have you back. We can continue this discussion at some
Thank
point
you.
and talk about other things too. Your experience
Mhm.
working in the substance abuse field and how critical that was to your
Absolutely. It
development.
would be an honor. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Hear about next week's uh, show briefly.
Yep. Next week we have Mark Blake. Is it Mark next week? Yes, we have Mark Blake returning with us. He was on our first show, and hopefully people can still hear me talking about him. He's wonderful. He does a lot in the area of natural health and wellness, live and raw food, fasting. He's just a wealth of information, and we're so excited about having him back. So please join us. You can join us on Facebook, Live, LinkedIn, or YouTube. Progressively Yours Health and Wellness Podcast. Thank you for joining us this evening, and you all take care. Have a great week and weekend.